What gets me fired up is what business owners think they need as opposed to what they actually need.
Kick it.
Welcome to Strata Stories. Strata PT combines your EMR and billing into one automated system to increase revenue and achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate for PT, OT, and speech clinics, and recently was ranked number one ranked EMR and billing for Kloss Research. This week, Paul Singh sits down with Amit Gaglani, a PT, practice coach, and former owner, to talk about why most PT practices don't need more patients or tools. They need better systems to keep the ones they already have. In this episode, they cover why 70% of patients self-discharge and how to fix it, how front desk and therapist communication impacts retention, why building your practice as if you're going to sell it improves profitability now. Let's get into it.
I wish I hit record during the pre-show while we were chatting because you were rightfully getting riled up a little bit. So let me set this up and then let me let you loose again. So you've been on the show with us for a while or in the past, and I'll let you explain what you do in a moment. But you talk to clinics all over the country, and one of the things you were sort of getting frustrated about was like you said something to the extent of, what practices often want is not what they need. And as you were starting to talk, and I didn't realize you were actually fired up about this, I will say just real quick, that triggered something for me real quick too, because I often will hear I was actually traveling these last couple of days and just visiting a couple of practices. And, I'm going to sound sarcastic, but we're all friends here. I would ask the question of like, hey, so what, I'm curious, what do you think you would need to, I don't know, just figuratively 10x this business? What would you need? And all of them said some variation of AI. They said it so matter-of-factly. They'd say, well, I need AI. And I'd say, oh, wow, okay. I thought they would say capital. I thought they would say something else, but they said AI. And I'm like, what? What is that going to do for you? And then they all basically repeated all the common AI marketing terms, faster this, faster that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think you need more innovation. Let's talk about what I think you need. Anyway, now let me set you up. You were talking about that concept, and just to get you going, you were starting to talk about patients and discharge rates and all that. And let me see if that gets you going again.
Okay. First, I need to apologize ahead of time. I get super passionate about the business of physical therapy, just physical therapy in general. So it just gets me going and starts me talking super fast. So I'm going to apologize to all your listeners ahead of time.
Well, and if they don't know you, by the way, you have owned a practice. You've exited that practice. You've worked in private equity, I believe, if I remember right. We sat down and talked about this.
Yeah, we had 100
PPS
practices across the country.
Yeah.
So some of the things that I've seen in our own practices, I would see in other practices.
Right.
And now, as a coach to these physical therapy companies and these private practices throughout the country, it's not just, sometimes they'll say, oh yeah, that works in your geographic area, but not in ours. So I have customers who are literally New York, New Jersey, down on the East Coast. I have them in Idaho, Utah, Colorado, California, in Washington, meaning they're all across the states. This is not geographic centered. This is just what we've seen, what I've seen all the time. And what gets me fired up is what business owners think they need as opposed to what they actually need. Okay. And I see it all the time. And to be honest with you, you see it in social media. What do you see these physical therapy companies who are promoting to physical therapy companies? These business and companies that are promoting to physical therapy companies, what are they pushing? We can help you get new patients. We can help you get new patients. When I look into these practices and look at these metrics, they don't need new patients. They have a database filled with patients that they treated successfully in the past, right? They have these same practices, more than 70% of their patients are self-discharged. So they need to build what I call a better mousetrap, or what others may have termed a better mousetrap. So I might go on and do videos and talk about, you need to set up systems in your practice. I'm not talking about systems where they can sit at home in their practices on self-drive. No, I'm talking about, once you have spent the money, once you have spent the hard-earned effort of acquiring a new patient. And Paul, I was in it. I own my practices. I had many physical therapists and things like that. And we would do marketing and we would acquire these new patients. And it is not easy. Okay. I had dear friends of mine that were physicians, orthopedic surgeons, spinal surgeons, podiatrists, and they were like, we give your card out at least 10 to 15 times a day. You must be overwhelmed with patients. And I would say, no, we probably got about 2 or 3 this week. And they're like, what? How is that possible? I'm like, because not every patient will follow what you believe that is right for them. You
That's
may
right.
sit there and send them, but that doesn't mean they're calling us. So
That's
the
right.
rate of patients that actually come after all the marketing efforts that we do is very small. Okay. So with those patients, we don't want to lose 70% of those. We want to get them into our fold, show them that physical therapy is right for them, not just on the eval. That's the thing. It has to
Yep.
continuously happen. So how do we build better systems, retain these patients? Now, this may sound stupid, but why do we want to retain these patients? Not just so we can make more money, but the truth is, if we are not servicing these patients to the ultimate benefit that they could receive, then they walk away and they say, go back to the doctor and say, oh, physical therapy just didn't help me. But the
Yep.
truth is, it's because they didn't come. It's because
Yep.
we didn't show them the value of why they need to come. They come
That's
in day after day and they just feel like they're doing the same thing and it's boring. And nobody keeps them engaged again and again. The systems that I'm talking about putting in is keeping them engaged, keeping them there so we can maximally treat them.
I totally agree with you. I didn't want to interrupt. I totally agree with you on this. And I will just kind of add, in case it helps for anybody listening, I'll just add this other additional point that what you're talking about is common knowledge in every other industry. I mean, your local grocery store manager would tell you the same thing. They'd say, listen, it costs more money to acquire a new shopper than to retain an existing one. Gap, Amazon. I mean, everybody would tell you this. And yet the point that you're making is so valid. It's a lot of practices don't think about it this way. I would, by the way, somebody listening to this right now is probably like, oh, whatever. They're probably rolling their eyes. But here's the thing, and I come from like the tech world, right? If I were to call the CEO, or frankly, if I were to call anybody at Bombas, the sock company right now, and I say, and I said, how much did it cost for you to acquire yesterday's customers? Instant answer. They won't even have to look it up, because in the e-commerce world, that's what they think about, right? But in our world, I bet you, if we were to just take any random practice owner right now and say, what do you think it cost you to acquire last month's patients? And is that less, worse, or more than it was 6 months ago? You're probably going to get crickets, right? So I totally agree with you. And I'll just add one other thing. In any other business, e-commerce, otherwise, if somebody said they had 70% customer drop off, or in their world, like in most e-commerce businesses, you'd call it churn or customer abandonment, things like that, you wouldn't be employed very long. Frankly, you wouldn't have a business very long. So let me ask you this, because I certainly have some thoughts from the tech world, but you've referenced this 70% drop off rate number. What do you think a healthy number is? Because it's never going to be 0%, right? Like,
20%.
It's
I would be
20%.
okay moving any of the practices that I work with from wherever they are to closer to 20%. I think that's realistic, and I think it's doable, and I've seen it done before. It just requires a lot of different departments in the physical therapy office working in unison.
Yeah.
And
so
making sure.
I think I know what you mean, but I'm going to ask you to just explain that. So for example, let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, yeah, I get it. I probably have a high drop off rate. What's an example of one or two things they should be doing? Obviously we'll put your contact info in here. They can come find you, but example of one or two things they can do tactically to go from 70 to 20.
First of all, they need to know their stats. They need to know what their current numbers are. You can't improve something if you don't know where they currently are. Okay. So that's the first thing. And I have a couple different dashboards that I use for my clinics. And one of them is monitoring the percent of prescribed. Okay. On a weekly basis, know the list of patients you have and what are they prescribed? Are they prescribed 2 times a week? Or are they prescribed 3 times a week? By the end of that week, based on the number of patients that came in, those patients, what percentage of prescribed actually came in? If 20% are coming in as prescribed, then you already know you're failing, right? If 80% are coming in as prescribed, then you're doing a good job. Okay. But you're monitoring that week to week. So the first thing is we need to set certain metrics and be able to monitor where we're at. The second thing is, all departments, and what I mean by all departments, the front desk is part of a communication department. They do a certain thing. The physical therapy or the production department, they do a certain thing. Okay. The marketing is a different department. They do a certain thing. So one thing is making sure that they're training their front desk enough to keep the patient engaged. That if the patient is calling to cancel, they're talking to them and explaining to them why they need to kind of stay on. Okay. Because they're the front line, right? So training them appropriately, training the physical therapist that eval is not your only opportunity to educate the patient, from moving them from one stage to another stage. Every visit, it has to be revisited and tell the patient what to look forward to on the next visit. So the patient doesn't ever feel like I just go 2 times a week and they just have me doing exercises and I'm getting bored of this. I'm going to stop coming.
Yeah.
They have to know what to look forward to. Now, those are two simple things. There's a lot more that goes into it, but this is what I mean by setting up systems in your practice that everybody's kind of following.
Yep.
Some PTs might be like, well, then I lose my autonomy. And this is not about losing your autonomy as a therapist. This is keeping your customer engaged. If we all acted like our business was a 5-star hotel and the patients are customers or guests, then the model of how we treat patients would be very different.
Yes. It's funny. I'm trying to temper myself here a little bit because, like you, I probably get a little too fired up. Well, you get fired up. I get probably too fired up. So, I'll probably get censored or something on the platforms. But anyway, here's yeah. I mean, I'm agreeing aggressively with you, and I would say if more practice owners just took an empathetic view to their patients, maybe they just make fewer decisions. Maybe they just be more open to these kinds of messages. And here's what I mean by that. And I say this with love. For anybody listening, hopefully that'll get punched in the throat next time I see you at some conference or whatever. But, I think a lot of practice owners, look, to take that entrepreneurial leap and start a practice requires some confidence, right? You got to believe that you're the person, that you've got the training, that you can do something. I get that, right? There's a little bit of ego involved, a little bit of confidence, but you need that. That's what it takes to step into the unknown. But equally as important, I think, but often missing the most is empathy. And what I mean by that is recognizing that a patient doesn't care about your credentials. Like if I was coming to your practice as a patient, I might show interest by saying, "Hi, Amit, how are you? How long have you been practicing? How are your kids?" Right? That's small talk. I don't care whether you went to Yale or community college. I don't, right? That's not what I think about, right? And so, but yet,
It's how well you
owners
can
don't think
relate
that
to your
way.
patients and how well your patients can relate to you.
Well, that's just it, right?
If I'm a Harvard graduate and I talk down to you, you're going to be like, I don't care, he's a Harvard graduate. I don't want to see that guy again.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Because, I love the example you gave there where you said that some of the folks are giving out your card lots of times a day. And then they imagine that you're getting inundated. And on the other end, you're like, I saw 3 new ones last week. I love the honesty there because what that shows, by the way, is not some bad thing on the part of the referring doctor or some bad thing in your practice. That shows the reality that consumer attention is very short.
Yeah.
Right. I'll just speak for myself. Maybe you can relate. Other people can relate. I'm a dad of 4. I got work. I got friends. I got kids. I got a wife. I got to mow the lawn. I got to do these things. And so, yeah, I might have gotten your card from that doctor this morning at 11 a.m. But it's not like I went to the car and said, "Let me go look up a minute and schedule it." I'm like, "Oh God, I got to jump on a call real quick." And next thing you know, the card's in my pocket. And then by the time I can take a breath, I'm picking up one of the kids from the bus stop. And I'm like, now I'm doing that. So my point to the audience, and you know this already, Amit, but my point to the audience is that if you run a physical therapy practice in 2025, whether you like it or not, you're more like every other e-commerce company or tech company out there. And that's a good thing because they've already cracked the nut for you in terms of how to retain them, how to make sure you're getting attention, all these things. And you can do it a lot of different ways. You can do email drip campaigns, phone calls, social media. There's a million things you could do. But the first step is just acknowledging. I like the way you put it. First thing you have to do is kind of acknowledge the problem, measure the problem, and then we can kind of fix it. So 70 to 20%. I'm sure it's more complicated than this, but as you think about this, just for somebody listening to this right now, How do you measure that? I mean, I assume it's just kind of like measuring, maybe even if you have to manually measure, like, hey, they were authorized for this many visits, but they only did this many. Like, how do you?
Well, even like your EMR and most EMRs have a button when you're getting discharged, like to categorize, like, are these self discharges and things like that. So that's the first thing that they can look at in their own EMR system to see, are these self discharges? And self discharges are just patients who sometimes just fall off the map and they discharge themselves. And another bad reason why some of these patients are self discharges is because we as therapists didn't do a good job defining the length of duration that we actually need them in. We just keep them coming. We just keep them coming, keep them coming, and the patient just kind of gets lost in the sauce. We're like, all I know is I just keep coming, and I'm going to stop scheduling. They don't know where the line ends. If the line ends like, okay, 6 to 8 weeks is where we're trying to aim for, and now it starts getting close to that time, we're like, hey, we're actually hitting your goals earlier. We're going to make it shorter. That's it. Or we need to make it a little bit longer because this and this happened. At least they have
Yep.
a goal, kind
Yep.
of like I
Yep.
have some of your customers have become my customers from listening to you here, us here, or just from wherever. But, they've heard me talk about like some of the business stuff that I did in terms of, how to sell your practice and how I sold my practice and the degrees that I took and the certifications that I took on how to, show them how to exit. Some of these practices, look, they've worked all their life and they've squirreled away money, but they didn't realize that they're building an entity that somebody may want to buy. And that's the
Yep.
huge amount of money where they'll get, not the amount that they put away in a 401k. So they come to this realization later and they're like, oh, wow, we want to be able to sell this thing. How do we do it? How do we make it worth value? And that's when I start reverse engineering and say, okay, if you're an outside investor and you're looking to buy something, what do you want to do? Now, I already know the answers, but I'm trying to pull it out of them, like to show them, look, this is what we need to change. We need to put this system in, this system in, this system in, because an investor values this. And even if that investor is your own employee, somebody wants to buy something of value.
Yeah.
So create the value and you'll get a higher sell value. And I'll show you how.
That's you put it so eloquently, by the way. It's like, yeah, it's almost like, I don't know if this has been your experience. I feel like if you were to take some random set of practice owners and you're like, hey, so, are you building this to sell or whatever? Most of them will say things like, well, I just want to help people and things like that. Right. But then if you can like wear them down, and whether that takes 2 glasses of wine or they're just beat after a long day, and then you ask them, they're like, oh yeah, man, I just want to like grow this thing and find a way out. And, I don't
So
know, sail
we
the
look at
Florida
that.
Keys.
we look at that, and my feeling is everybody should be building their company like at one day they're going to sell it. It doesn't mean they're selling it tomorrow. It means that eventually they're going to exit one way or the other. Either they're just going to give it up, but then they're giving up something of value, or they're going to sell it to their children, but then they're going to sell it to their children for $1, but it's going to be of higher value, or they're going to sell it to an existing physical therapy company, but then they can ask for more money for it, or they're selling it to a PE company, but then they can ask for more money. If you build it the right way, everybody always benefits in the end.
I could not agree more. I always tell people 2 things. Number one, getting bought and getting sold are 2 very different things.
Yeah.
And then number 2, doing what it takes to get bought is actually the same stuff that's required to
build your own company,
grow.
right? But they actually make more if they do those things, Paul. They start making more money now, and that's the key. You're going to make more money now if you do these things because that's what you really want. And at the end, you're going to get more life out of it. Meaning, these are things to help give you more life instead of feeling beaten up after a 60, 70-hour work week. So many owners that I talk to get into the business of physical therapy because A, they want to do it better. B, they want to be their own boss. Well, that works great until they're starting to put in 70, 80 hours a week. And then they start feeling beaten up. Like, this isn't the reason why I did this. Like, I'm starting to feel worn out. Like, it's because they're trying to do everything.
This is going to sound like a philosophical soapbox. But first of all, I think what you're saying is absolutely right. And I think this notion of like, hey, you don't need more tools, you don't need more advice, you don't need all these things. Really, you really just kind of need to build a better mousetrap. Like you're already acquiring patients. Let's not let 70% of them disappear because that kind of just means you have to Well, actually, let's just talk about that math problem for a minute here, because in the tech world, we essentially call that churn, right? So if you lost no customers in a given time period, if you could retain 100% of them, then every new patient or every new customer you get is a net gain. Now, the problem that most people don't understand here, and you get this more than anybody else, but most of our listeners may not understand this yet. If you lose just 10% of your customers every, in this case, let's say patients, you lose 10% of your patients every month, then that means that if your goal is to just stay afloat, you need 10% more patients every month. Now you extrapolate that out over the course of a year, you basically, just for easy math, if you lose 10% of your customers every month, all things being equal, multiply that by 12, you have to get 120% new customer acquisition, new patient acquisition per year just to hit the baseline.
Correct. Yeah.
And now do the math on 70%.
Yeah.
Or whatever,
that's the exact
whoever's
point.
listening.
That's the
Right?
exact point. It's kind of like
And
also
so, like,
having your business and having you have an idea of every week I need to see X amount of patients to pay the bills, but everything above this is profit. Then all of a sudden you get like Labor Day coming up and Monday is wiped out. So now you're like, wait, I need to get all those same patient visits from Tuesday through Friday, but hey, I can't get the extra ones in to make the profit. So we're just going to be able to pay our bills on that week.
That's
I
right.
didn't get into this just to pay my bills.
Bingo. Yeah, no, bingo. That's right. Yeah. Now, before anybody gets discouraged, this is solvable, right? Like,
Absolutely.
look around your city, your state, whatever. Like, there's businesses that have clearly solved this. You can too. I think your point, Amit, and mine probably is very similar in the sense that what you just don't want to do is be naive to the situation. Like, pretending it doesn't exist is not a good look. Blaming lack of practice growth on some boogeyman around the corner is just a lie. Or at least it's like creative excuse making. But I like the way you're kind of putting it, right? Is it like, you don't need all these extra things. Maybe not yet. You need to make sure that the customers you're bringing in complete
The
the plan of
foundation.
care.
Your
Yeah,
foundation has
and
to be
they
strong.
think of you the next time something
Yeah.
happens.
Not only that, but
Um,
what you don't want to do when you haven't figured all that out is keep adding more offices, because you are adding so much pressure and stress to yourself that is unnecessary. You haven't even perfected your one thing yet. And I often have told patients, customers of mine, no, don't go for that office yet. You haven't figured this out yet. Look at these stats. We need to get this in line. Once you figure this out, yes, let's open up more and you will feel better. But if you do it now, you're just going to feel more stress.
that's right. Man, I love it. Okay, so usually when we publish these things, obviously we put people where you would put your LinkedIn and your website and all that stuff. But what's the best place people can find you? A LinkedIn DMs? Do you prefer that?
Definitely LinkedIn. I love it on there because I'm posting stuff on there every day, and I'm trying to interact with people on there every day. So LinkedIn, they can definitely find me. They could probably find me easily in all the same spots. To be honest, I'm starting to forget the handles of the different
That's right. I'm the same way.
It's not just under my name; it's under like PT entrepreneur or something like that under things. So, but yeah, and I'm sure you guys are going to give my website, and that's easy.
It'll all be on. Yeah, we'll put it all in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love to have conversations with people. So if anybody just has questions, please feel free to reach out.
I love it. Now we're recording this kind of more than halfway through the year for 2025. Anyways, any big conferences you're going to be at this year where people can come find you? I'm guessing you'll be at PPS.
I'll see you at PPS Orlando. Yeah, I'll definitely be there.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Strata Stories. Strata PT combines your EMR and billing into one automated system to increase revenue and achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate for physical, occupational, and speech therapy clinics. If you'd like to learn more about Strata PT and see how our EMR and billing services work, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo.